Buenos dias. I have to start saying something in my native language, the language I dream in, although I will be speaking in English. It is an honor for me to be here. Thank you very much to Access Israel for this invitation. To the team of G3ict. I would like to begin by presenting those who are accompanying me for the organization. First of all, Axel Lebois. Please, Axel. The CEO of G3ict, his wife, Christine, who is the treasurer of the organization, and James Thorsten, who is our vice president and technology. I have some slides which I will be referring to during this presentation, but I would like to tell you a small story. In 2006, the CRPD, the Convention on Disability for Persons with Disability, was approved by the General Assembly. We had been working, and I had been chairing the working group that formulated and drafted the Convention on Disability. A person came with a dream. Axel came to talk to me and asked me to join them in looking and forming an organization which was a global initiative for inclusive information and communication technologies. And we sat down in New York in December of 2005 before the convention was approved, because we believed that in the disability area, information and communication technologies would be vital for the use and applications that we needed in a world of more than 1 billion people who are disabled. The mission was to promote the CRPD, the accessibility of this information and communication technology, and the focus with the support of UNDESA and the support of, I have to move these slides, I'm sorry. And with the support of UNDESA, the ITC industry and organizations of persons with disabilities, government, standards, and development organizations. The accessibility obligations are now ratified by 175 countries. The CRPD is the human rights convention that has been the most successful convention in the history of the 10 conventions on human rights of the United Nations. It has, in a record time, been ratified and signed by these 175 countries. And the first day it was opened in New York in 2006, it was signed by 80 countries. When we drafted the CRPD, Article 9 on accessibility was one of the fundamental issues that was brought to our attention by the accessibility community, by the disability community. But we also were very knowledgeable about integrating the future. What we are talking about today is the use of technologies to ensure that we have the capabilities in the future, now and in the future, to integrate persons in their workplace, in their livelihoods, to make sustainable development and lives of people with disabilities. There are multiple articles in the CRPD that refer to ICTs in education, in culture, in television, and employment. Over 33 are references to the use of technology. The key areas of ICT and accessibility advocacy are web accessibility. Of course, if everything is electronic, and we are living in a period of electronic and smart cities, smart health, smart education, we need to make the web accessible. TV and audiovisual accessibility. The world is interconnected. We need to have this available, but not only for persons that are categorized as disabled by the World Health Organization and the World Bank. Over 1 billion people have disabilities. You are either born with a disability, you acquire it during your life, by sickness, by accidents, by war, by whatever other accident. But certainly as we age, we all will be disabled. This is not an issue about them or a minority. It is about all of us. Internet usage by persons with disabilities, e-book and digital contents, inclusive ITCs for education, for employment, e-government and smart cities, which I mentioned, enabling assistive technologies and ICTs for independent living, procurement for accessible public goods and services. I will underline this last one. We need to have public policies that include procurement of everything governments and private sectors buy that are accessible. Making them accessible later is both costly and inefficient. We must include this as a horizontal issue in all aspects that include a vision of integration, implementation, and accessibility. What are the two driving forces? Public policy. We need illustrated members not only of civil society who can activate and trigger those who are in the decisions of public policy, and we need to make them knowledgeable about the market. The market is a driving force, and we are here in a meeting where you see innovation which will make the markets available for new developments in ITCs, but that will benefit these who are disabled and those of us who will become disabled. G3ict is a global advocacy, has global advocacy activities, basically in 4 areas. 1, accessibility in policy center. We have developed toolkits. We have signed agreements with the International Telecommunications Union, with UNESCO. We have developed advisory supports for governments. We have worked with more than 80 governments around the world, and we have the vision of having global programs like smart cities and procurements. We have a summit in Washington every June, which is the M-Enabling Summit, but we also have outbreaks of these in Australia, Italy, and Russia. We try to share good practices, financial services, employment, higher education, reports, and white papers, innovative solution and new highlights. The third is international advocacy and support. Accessibility, progress reports, joint activities in government agencies. I forgot to mention ILO, UNDESA, the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, and WIPO. What we do? Capacity building for these institutions and others, but basically for DPOs. And we work very closely with IDA and DPI. The International Association for Accessibility Professionals is another 4th pillar of our organization. We believe that we require certified technicians. We have 900 affiliate testing centers and more than 1,200 members. And we have international chapters, and I will wait for the announcement later by Yuval. Bridging the gap. Solutions exist to many and most ITC accessibles for persons with disability. However, their level of adoption is still limited. Successful technologies, policies, capacity building initiatives are involving all stakeholders in the world. And closing this adoption gap has to be replicated around the world. We have an index, the ITC Accessible Estimate Index, of 121 countries representing 89% of the world population. Who are the respondents? Basically, persons with disability, advocates, researchers, and community leaders through organizations of persons with disabilities. We have anchored the basis of our analysis on what the people use. And this is why DPI, RADIS, and other advocacy organizations work with us very closely. It is 7 years of historical data, measuring commitments, capacities, implementation, and outcomes. The good news, 84% of the countries globally have constitutional articles, laws, or regulations on the rights of persons with disabilities. 63% of the countries globally have a definition of reasonable accommodation, including the law or regulation regarding the rights of persons with disabilities. 48% of the countries globally have aligned their definition of accessibility with Article 9 of the CRPD. We hope that more countries will come into the alignment with the Convention which is a universal law regime. 35% of the countries globally, including persons with disabilities, as a target group for their universal service obligations. Let me say that from very few prior to the CRPD ratifications. The positive evolution of legislation in support of the CRPD accessibility is there. But not how much of this impact is available for access to ITCs is the reality. Countries' actual implementations and the accessibility levels of ICTs averaged 2 out of 5. We must better these numbers. Having laws is not enough. We must have the implementation of these issues grow in every one of the areas which I have mentioned. It is extremely important that this be done also in the part of the world where I come from. 80% of the persons of the world come from underdeveloped countries. Ecuador has a very good policy toward disability and in ICTs. And I will tell you something that is very unique for my country, at least. There are more cell phones in Ecuador than people. So we trust that in the evolution of technologies, we will have it available to all. The countries with measurable progress are here. 25 of 50 score or greater than ICT accessibility implementation outcomes. The first one is Oman. The second one is Qatar. The United States, Brazil, Israel is there. Italy, South Africa, United Kingdom, France, Spain, Australia, Ireland. This is the DARE Index dashboard of ITC accessibility data by advocates for advocates. We developed this as an instrument and as a tool for persons who make advocacy a purpose of life in order to have public policies and illustrate governments and decision makers to do this. The driving forces for a future accessible society. The tremendous advances of technology innovation, the user interface, artificial intelligence, speech recognition, near-field communications, Internet of Things, localization services, augmented reality allow for unprecedented solutions. Cost of the technology is ever going down, decreasing on a global scale. However, we have continued challenges. As always, accessibility of contents and services, fundamentally languages, user support, where and how, actual user adoption among older generations who do not have the capability of understanding the new technologies as young people do, and privacy issues. Maybe the most complicated one are the privacy issues. Our purpose now is closing the gap, and we are here to propose to you to work jointly in this endeavor whose only purpose is to better the lives of persons with disabilities. I must underline something that is extremely important. This organization is a non-profit. It is an organization that works on the basis of voluntarism, and those of us who work in it believe that we all the people who work in it, which are in the dozens, have contributed their time and efforts on a voluntary basis. It is an extraordinary organization that was created from the dream which I told you at the beginning. Thank you very much.